He was trying to save lives. That was it. No ambition for fame, no desire for recognition, just a simple goal: to understand why so many people were dying. His name was Ignaz Semmelweis, and what he discovered should have changed everything, but it didn't. In fact, it made his life worse. At the time, he worked in a hospital, in a maternity ward, where women came to give birth, and something was wrong, very wrong. A large number of women were dying shortly after childbirth. Not from the birth itself, but from infection, fever, something unseen, something no one fully understood. And the strangest part? It wasn't happening everywhere. There were 2 wards in the same hospital, same conditions, same purpose, but one ward had far more deaths than the other. That didn't make sense, and most people accepted it. They said it was fate, bad air, chance, something beyond control. But Semmelweis didn't accept that, because he believed something simple: if there is a pattern, there is a reason. So he began to observe, carefully, relentlessly, looking for differences, anything that could explain it, and eventually he found one. In one ward, doctors and medical students worked. In the other, midwives. Now that might not seem important, but there was something else, something subtle, something almost invisible. The doctors were also performing autopsies, handling dead bodies. Then, without washing their hands, they would go directly to deliver babies. Think about that. Today, it sounds obvious, but at the time, no one saw the connection. There was no concept of germs, no understanding of contamination, just routine, habit, assumption. But Semmelweis saw something different. He realized that something was being transferred from the dead to the living, through contact, through hands, and that was causing the deaths. So he did something simple. He introduced a rule: wash your hands before treating patients. That's it. No complex solution, no advanced medicine, just one action. And the results were immediate. The death rate dropped dramatically, from extremely high to almost nothing. Lives were being saved every day because of something so simple, and you would expect that this would be celebrated, accepted, adopted everywhere, but it wasn't. Instead, he was rejected, criticized, ignored, because his discovery created a problem. Not medically, ego, because if he was right, then the doctors themselves were responsible for the deaths. Their actions, their habits, their assumptions had been killing people, unintentionally, but still. And that was too much to accept. So instead of changing, they resisted. They dismissed his ideas, mocked him, avoided the truth, because it was easier to deny reality than to confront it. Now imagine being in that position. You know something is true. You have evidence. You see the results. You are saving lives. And yet, no one listens. No one changes, because they don't want to be wrong. Most people in that situation would give up, become bitter, stop trying. But Semmelweis didn't. At least, not at first. He kept pushing, kept explaining, kept trying to get people to see, because to him, this wasn't about being right. It was about saving lives. But over time, the resistance wore him down, not because he doubted the truth, but because he couldn't change others. And that is one of the hardest realities to accept. You can see clearly. You can understand something deeply. You can know what is right, and still be unable to make others see it. Because people don't just resist ideas, they resist what those ideas imply. And in this case, it implied responsibility, and responsibility is something many people avoid. Eventually, Semmelweis became frustrated, angry, more direct, less patient, and that shift worked against him. Because now, instead of focusing on the truth, people focused on him, his tone, his behavior, his intensity, and the message was lost. That is the danger. Even when you are right, how you deliver it matters. Because people don't just hear information, they react to it emotionally, defensively. And if that reaction is triggered, they stop listening, even if what you're saying is true. In the end, Semmelweis did not see his idea fully accepted in his lifetime. He was dismissed, isolated, and eventually his life ended tragically. But the truth he discovered did not disappear. Over time, others confirmed it. Science advanced, understanding grew, and eventually, hand-washing became standard. Lives were saved on a massive scale because of what he saw. So what is the lesson? It's not just about medicine, it's about perspective. Semmelweis saw something others refused to see, not because they couldn't, but because it challenged them. And that happens everywhere, in work, in relationships, in life. Truth is often uncomfortable because it forces change, and change requires letting go of what you believe, what you're used to, what protects your identity. But if you can see clearly and stay grounded, you gain something rare: clarity. Not control over others, but control over your own understanding. And that is where strength comes from, because you don't need agreement to know what is true, and you don't need validation to act on it. Semmelweis lost recognition in his lifetime, but he did not lose clarity. And that clarity changed the world, even if it took time. And that is something worth understanding, because sometimes being right is not enough. You also need patience and perspective to hold on to the truth without being consumed by the resistance around you. And that balance is where real strength exists.